Northwestern Ontario Shield Lakes are full of muskies. It's often said, find the sand on a shield lake and you will find the muskies. But along with the sand, you absolutely have to find the weeds. And yes, those two go hand in hand. When you find the sand, you are going to find the weeds. Are all weeds created equal? No, they're not. Today, we're going to break down 4 examples of weed fishing in Northwestern Ontario. And we're going to start right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to our Whiteboard series on breaking down shield lakes up here in Northwestern Ontario. And I just want to say thank you guys. It's been a really popular series and it's been really fun for us to do too, looking back at some of our catches and how we break down some of these areas. Today we're going to break down weeds and primarily shallow weeds. We do have one example that's a little bit deeper, but for the most part, we're talking weeds on the sand and we're talking the dirtiest, sloppiest weeds you can find. Not all weeds on shield lakes are created the same. You get your cabbage, you get like a milfoil, you get some of that pond weed style, but for the most part, what we're looking for is going to be that heavy tobacco cabbage style of weeds, and that's kind of where we're going with our video today. Inside of one video, there's no way we could break down every style of weed that you're going to encounter when you guys come up to Canada, but we're going to do our best, and we're going to start with our first example right now. So for example number 1, this is classic beach sand with weeds on shield lakes. And this is very common, especially where you have residential areas on lakes that you have cabins along shoreline with sand beaches. And in this case, this is a little bit of a deeper breaking shoreline. It drops almost right down to 4 feet. And it's a little bit of a darker sand along this side. Off this point, we have a weed, kind of a weed point that comes out, tops out around 8 feet. And then on this side, we have just a classic sand beach where you take the kids swimming. But we have, at about 4 foot depth, we start to see the cabbage that forms, and it runs almost all the way out to that 8 foot depth. So what we're looking for in areas like this, it's easy to just run your boat out along that 10 or 12 foot area and cast in and try and hit this outside edge. And in a lot of cases, that's what everybody tells you to do. Just sit on the outside, cast to the edge of the weeds, pull those active fish out from the edge of the weeds. But we don't see it that way. And a lot of times when you can break down these weed patches, and in this one, it has 2 distinct kind of avenues in the weeds. So here we see, this is almost like a L-shaped weed bed. So it has the long part on the outside, and then there's a finger that runs in right up to that 4 foot area. Lots of times we see fish sitting in this inside corner, and then to the next patch, which is kind of just a square round patch of weeds, there's an avenue between there where there's no weeds. Go a little bit further over, and as the weeds start to kind of dwindle down, there's another avenue over here, and then the weeds just kind of disperse, and then there's only a few sporadic patches. So when we attack a spot like this, you're going to see that we try to hit these key spots, these avenues. So in the example coming up, you're going to see that we actually try to target these little key spots. So these avenues between weed patches and these inside corners, or possibly this outside corner. In this instance, we have the boat sitting around 8 feet, and I actually cast into this avenue and I pull the fish out. I suspect the fish is sitting on either side here, waiting for something to use that open avenue to move from shallow out to deeper. And this day I caught it on a Dadson double fluted 8, kind of a red perch style pattern. And we use a lot of bucktails around weeds because we're able to just burn them fast, and you can kind of run your bucktail around the weeds. You got a little bit of control. So that's what we're using. Let's check out that example right now.
So this is our whole day. Oh no, it doesn't show tomorrow. Okay, so
Oh, here was one.
right now.
Oh, he's on you, gun. Got him. Okay, just a minute. He's nice too.
Daddy,
Ski too.
do you want me to hold your wad?
Yes, come back here. Come back here.
He's not hooked real
I
well,
know,
Dave.
I know.
Okay guys, here Glenn McDonald 54 Bust. We were in this weed bed earlier today. We raised I think 5 fish in here and we just come back. We're just off of our major moon and I come in with a bucktail, and this is a Captain's Wheel by Johnny Dadson and kind of a fire tiger with some red. And just as we come into the heaviest part of the weeds, the fish come out. He nipped at it. We had 1 barb in and we were able to get him in the bag. He wasn't hooked very well. We'll have a quick look at him here.
He is not happy.
Tail out.
Example number 2 is slightly different, but again, we are on a shoreline that has a lot of homes and cabins along it. So you see we have some docks off of shore. Anytime you have docks off of shore and you have an area of sand where you have weeds out in front of it, you can almost guarantee there's going to be a resident muskie around. So in this case, we have about a 3-foot depth at the end of their docks. There's a really prominent weed patch that comes out and it tops out around 8 feet. This is super thick, really heavy cabbage, very hard to get through. And then the breaking shoreline here breaks down to about 11 feet from 5 feet. But we try to hit this point that comes out underwater. And in the example here, we actually come in with the boat and we tried to stay out because I wanted to hit these deep breaking lines thinking there would be a fish on this outer edge. We kind of made a pass there. We didn't see anything. We rolled around. Now I'm sitting in about that 11-foot area and I'm casting right into the 5-foot, right into the middle of the slop. And I was using my Dadson blade with no name. I was just reeling it as quick as I could as soon as it hit the water. And this big tiger hit from right in the middle of this sloppy patch of weeds. So the common sentiment of just casting your outside edge didn't work for us in this example, so we had to move in and kind of adapt. And because we've had really good success way back in this weed bed in the past, I wasn't afraid to get right in there and even risk picking up some weeds on my lure. And in this case, it really worked out good. We got a beautiful tiger that come right out of that thick, heavy slop.
Fish. Big one? Nope. Musky. Yeah. For a big plate.
Okay, pull her out of the bag here and have a look at her.
Definitely got a weird hump in the back.
It definitely has a weird hump in the back. Example number 3 is another one where we just kind of went against the grain. Dave and I are up here fishing. This is an island, this is an island, this is a small kind of section of islands. And we got a few rocks off the corner. And we cast out. A lot of times you'll see fish sitting on this kind of 7 to 9 foot break off of this point. We will see some off of this smaller island in that 5 to 7, 8 feet range. And we kind of moved across here and we were casting this 5 to 7 foot area where the weeds run right across. And I think we had picked up 2 pike, but we just weren't convinced that there was no fish in here. It's such a fishy looking spot. So we let ourselves drift in a little bit and we were sitting in about 4 or 5 feet of water, if I remember correctly. And I was casting way into the back. We couldn't even get the boat in here. It was so thick and so shallow. Dave was casting this edge here. I believe we moved a fish from the inside and then I had one follow from way in the back. So very similar to example number 2. This fish come from the deepest, sloppiest weeds that we see here. and that fish followed me out, and I got him to go in the 8 right here, and we ended up with a really nice 4-footer that otherwise, if we would have just did that outside pass, I don't think we would have had a chance of catching. And that one, again, hit my Dadson blade with no name, just being able to get it in there and then just try and move that bait around the weeds as I'm bringing it in. That fish just chased it down hard. He had his nose down. We knew we were going to have a really good shot at him, and it worked out really good for us. Alright, so that's at least we got something to show for the morning.
Okay.
Got a few picks, we're gonna get her back in. Example number 4 is a fish that Dave catches, and this is probably the most complex weed area that we see in our 4 examples here. And I include, it's almost like a transition area, which I do want to talk about in an upcoming video, but I just think that the way this fish was caught really leads itself to finding the sloppiest, dirtiest weeds you can find in any given area. So this area has a reef that pretty much breaks the surface on lower water years. It's hittable all the time. Has some big boulders on the top side of it. There's a long sandbar that runs out, and there are some sporadic weeds. I just didn't mark them on here for the sake of clarity. And lots of times we will see fish all the way out on the sandbar. So it's a spot that you almost have to fish that whole area and then work your way in. So on this particular day, we had worked there. We come around to the inside, and we try to hit all these transition areas as we work across it. And normally what we do, because we like to fish out of the port side, we come in and we cast up to the reef and into these weeds. So we had the boat positioned around here, and I was casting almost straight in front of the boat, trying to get into that dirty, sloppy weeds. And Dave is casting up there. He hadn't seen anything, and he just kind of cast up in front of me while I was reeling in, and he got hit way out from the boat. And not knowing exactly how the weeds were last year, I suspect he was right on the very tip of that really sloppy area of weeds right there. And we end up with a really nice tiger in the boat. And in the past, a lot of times, if we don't see him right in here, we'll roll the boat around, and then we start casting the beach. And if we don't see fish in the middle of the sloppy weeds, we'll see them down in the beach. And there's a weed line that runs from the beach out to here. And it's just like, it's like a musky highway. They use those to move back and forth. On this day, that fish was sitting out in the sloppy weeds. It come in, it hit a Drop Tine Tackle prototype spinnerbait with a little knocker bell on it. And I do believe Thatcher and Jody will have this available for sale this year. Just a tremendous bait, something we used last year, and one that you guys are definitely going to want to have for around the weeds. While we're still on the subject of areas like this that have that thick, heavy weed and shallow weeds along the beach, if you're fishing shallow, I really like spinner baits like this, because you can basically cast these right onto the sand. You can hit bottom, drag them up into the weeds, get through the weeds. They run fairly weedless. Here's another one we use a lot of. This is a Flash Bowski by Lebowski Lures. It's a lot heavier. It's a bigger profile bait, but you can literally cast this onto the sand on the beach and then pull it straight through the weeds. So an example like this, if you have weeds that are out at 2 feet of depth and there's a little bit of beach behind it, you can cast right behind those weeds and pull it through and pull a fish that might be sitting right on shore. So definitely you want to have some spinner baits in your arsenal if you're fishing sandy weeds.
bait. There's fish.
Here, Kenzie, grab this. Reel it in. Hey guys, Len McDonald here. Dave Cheval's tending to a big tiger we just caught. We caught it on a prototype spinnerbait from Drop Tine Tackle.
This guy will be easy to recognize. Look at his snout on this poor guy. Look at his nose.
Oh yeah, he's got
Hey, kitty, look out, please.
He's got a stub nose for sure on this one, pretty recognizable. We don't use a lot of different style of baits when we're fishing weeds. We keep it really simple. You can see we use a ton of bucktails. I just feel that a bucktail, especially one that you're comfortable with, you can get it in those little alleys between the weeds. You can kind of roll that around. You got some control over it. We do use top water, stuff like a prop tail, like a fat bastard, some walk the dog stuff. The problem if the weeds are right to the surface, you're getting hung up. This is something brand new from Lumox Lures. This is called his Dreadnought. This is something I want to get around some of the weeds, especially the weeds that aren't right up to the surface. This is just a really noisy bait. I think this is going to be something cool this year that a lot of fish up our way haven't seen. Glide baits are really good around weeds as long as, like I say, they're not right up to the surface. We don't use a ton of glide baits, but we are going to this year start using them more just to see if they're a style of bait that we can kind of walk and drive through those weed alleys and try and just trigger fish that might be sitting there that a bucktail just running over quick, maybe they wouldn't react to, but a slightly slower moving glide bait might be just a trick. So it's definitely something we're going to be trying. And if you guys have success with glide bait, just put it down in the comments below so I can kind of see what you guys are using. Anybody who's watched the last few videos knows we use swim baits, and here's a shallow swimming dog, another great bait around the weeds. We have the little magnet attachments to keep the hooks up to the body. It helps. They're not weedless, but it helps them run through the weeds a little better. So we definitely use stuff like that. Another style of bait that we didn't really use early on, but my buddy Kevin Wagner does use them, and is the plastic, high-impact plastic Suix. And this one's a custom one. It actually has weights in it, but the unweighted ones, if you just slow move these through the weeds, you can run these right over the top of weeds, and you can get some crazy reaction bites on a dive and rise that you can keep up in the top of the water column. So that's just a really good style of bait to use, and it's one that we will be using more of moving forward. Appreciate you guys watching, and not all sand and weeds are created equal on Shield Lake, so hopefully today's examples will give you guys some food for thought, and maybe you'll attack the weeds a little bit different on your Canadian trip this summer. And if you want to see some more muskie action, check out this video right here. We had a great day, and until next time, 54 Bust is out of here, and we're going to catch you guys out on the water later.